Lovely to meet you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Nice to meet you too.
Really appreciate it. I was just thinking how bloody weird this is, that here we are sitting in the Langham, the lounge of the Langham, where there are rules about how one ought to behave and all this kind of stuff. It's kind of odd, rock and roll, isn't it, where it might take you, where you might end up. Was it ever your expectation that you would be, five-star hotel, travel the world, club lounges and all that kind of stuff, successful, Dean?
I believe last time, John, when you and I were climbing the mountains in the Himalayas, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago?
5, yeah.
5. And conversation turned to politics, as it normally does with you.
New Zealand politics, yeah.
I started to try to convince you of music and the potential that it could have, and when you finally invited us to New Zealand and brought us here today, I don't know, I just wanted to say that.
Thanks for that, Jack. Jack, do you tell lies all the time, Jack?
No, just now.
Some of the time.
Some of the time. You have to. How can you get by? I mean, waiter says, how was the meal? It was fine. It was great. It's not really worth the trouble to tell him how terrible it was.
And also, when you become famous
Yes.
and you're asked the same questions ad infinitum, it's a way of, it must be a kind of release valve, is it, just to make stuff up?
Oh, only if it sells records. You have to think of it that way. I mean, it's not going to propel you into the next tax bracket. It doesn't really do much good. I mean, it could be funny for a second, but really, you're hurting kids' feelings, so you have to take their feelings into consideration.
I was reading this amazing interview with Andrew Perry. I think you've spoken to him a lot.
He's a good guy, yeah. I owe him a lot of money.
Yeah.
Wait, what did he say?
Oh, no, just lots of good stuff. But he's talking about 2004 and how haunted you looked in 2004 and how not haunted you don't look now.
Yes.
How unhaunted you look.
Unhaunted.
What's the difference between then and now? Is it that you managed to manage the business of being Jack White, working with people like Dean and doing other stuff, the Dead Weather or whatever, that at some...
Yeah.
You found a way to be.
Maybe so. I mean, I think it was do or die, sink or swim. There was a time where, we came from a different musical scene, Dean and I, and it's very vicious. You have to sort of fight your way through it. I mean, if you came out through a country music scene or something, I mean, the more success you have or something, you might even be more propelled to keep going farther and totally patted on the back the entire way. I don't know. I'm from I live in Nashville now, so it's just the way I look at it on that side of things. But in the music realm we came from was very clouded with a lot of strange ideas about what fame and success or any of those things mean. A lot of punk rock iconography and idolism would permeate everyone's thoughts about what you should and shouldn't do when it comes to music and how you should try to be perceived by other people, but it's very difficult. I mean, I used to say, I finally started to say, it's all well and good as long as you don't succeed, So,
but you did succeed.
That's what I'm saying, yeah. I guess you're just forced to understand it better so you can keep moving forward. If you don't, it'll just swallow you up, I guess.
Yeah, destroy you. I'm thinking of dear old Coldplay and Chris Martin, who... they first came to New Zealand about 10 years ago. They were beautiful boys. Anything seemed possible. Now they seem to be single-handedly responsible for propping up EMI's share price. I mean, that's a crappy way to live your life, isn't
it? It really is.
Jack.
Yes.
It's amazing watching you beyond Dean. So you're looking around, and your thumb is going the whole time. You want everyone, as the floor ladies, the room service ladies are walking through.
The ladies.
Yeah, the ladies. And so, when are you calm?
Right now, I'm very calm right now.
Are you?
The doctors tell me I'm very calm right now.
I just
they weren't saying that yesterday.
I just wonder about your energy.
Yes.
And the way you keep... And there's this lovely quote from Andrew Perry, an inflexible 3-year cycle of album, endless touring, recuperation. Under such conditions, White, a man of pathological restlessness, would surely combust. And bands like the Dead Weather, or the Raconteurs and whoever, are they your way of dealing with the inevitability of combustion if you just stayed with the White Stripes?
They just happen out of pure necessity. I've never planned to be in the Dead Weather. I never planned to be in the Raconteurs. But I think the difference with me is that I don't get in the way of those ideas. I think a lot of artists might say, look, there's 4 of us in a room recording together. This is really happening. But a normal, good business sense would tell you that, well, can't really do that right now. I already have this band called the White Stripes. It's taking up a lot of my time. But I don't really do it that way. I've always thought, well, if this is happening, I really need to pursue it because this could be the next step for me in pushing myself to do something new and interesting. I guess in a sense it's a really selfish feeling, because I have to feed my inspiration first and foremost, or nothing else comes of it that anybody else could take from. So I guess I don't really have a choice in it. I never really have. I think it seems like from the outside I might be choosing all the time to do this or that, but I really feel myself that I haven't had any choice at all.
Bill Bradley in Vanity Fair said, "I never fully understood the White Stripes," and I think that's how Jack and Meg would want it.
Yeah.
Except I always think that sort of presupposes that you understand. I mean, the sense I'm getting is that you're just viscerally going for it.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no grand architecture at all you're suggesting in what you're doing. Is that
Well,
right?
it'd be quite boring if it was completely planned out, and even if it was completely planned out and it succeeded at that, it would be quite boring too. Leaving half of it open for interpretation and open to grow would be a lot more interesting to me. That's why I've always tried to look at it.
You guys got a new album coming out in May. And did you impose time restrictions on yourselves and record it in a short period? All that stuff?
Here and there.
Yeah, it's about the same. Yeah, 2.5, 3 weeks.
Yeah, in the end, it was about the same amount of time. We playing along with our demos, too, recording along with our demos, not erasing them, but playing alongside them was the interesting idea in this record. It's called Sea of Cowards. It's coming out in a couple of weeks, or about a month or something. I don't know. Was it March now?
Yeah, mid-March.
Maybe in end of April or something like that.
Yeah. And how often, did you get really near what you wanted in the first take or couple of takes and think, actually, we can stop? Does that happen?
Very much so, yeah. And you're onto something if that's what's happening. Going back and recording on a computer or trying to perfect it ends up usually ruining the soul of the track. You want to stay as close to that as possible. It's very difficult. It's not always where you can just walk in a room, play, and press record, and it comes out interesting live. Sometimes it just doesn't happen. And that was the same for any band. The Beatles too. They couldn't always just walk in and do it. They just had to. They just weren't very good songwriters. I was kidding.
There was so much the Beatles couldn't do in a funny sort of way.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine if Lennon or McCartney had said, "Look, I'm just actually going to bugger off for a wee while and join, 3 other bands.
Right.
Yeah, I'll be back. I may be back. I may not. I'm not quite sure at the moment."
You couldn't do it back then.
They couldn't do that,
Yeah.
could they?
No. EMI wouldn't let them.
And so you resist that stuff. So the old adage, "to thine own self be true," seems to me to be the case more with you fellows. Is that right, do you think?
You have to be. I think you couldn't sit down and really write out ideas for other people to be pleased by. It has to please you first and inspire you first before anyone else can get something from it. I think when you go and see a band on stage, you're looking for a lot of things. You're looking to see if there's some genuine interest happening from the artists themselves, if it's not pre-planned, or and how much of it you can relate to. So you're always watching them to see how they're relating to their own music. Some people go up and just play it, they lip sync, or they play to a track, or they play the same set every night. And I'm completely disinterested because I think the artist isn't even interested in his own work. So how can I care about it? How can I love you if you don't love yourself?
What about the alchemy of playing with other musicians? So when you go from, say, the Queens to Raconteurs to Dead Weather, does that reinvent your joy of what you're doing and your enthusiasm for it? Forgive this question because it's an insight into my psychology rather than yours. But do the other projects take that personally? I mean, because music has essentially been monogamous always, and so when you're having open marriages, what about the other guys? They're thinking, hold on a
Of
sec.
course, yeah. Meg told me the other day when we started the Dead Weather, she goes, "Well, then I'm never going to a Raconteurs show ever again." It took me a while to figure that out. I'm still thinking about that.
I'm still thinking about that. So, right.
We should talk about that later.
Speaks in
Yeah,
code, yeah.
she does. So you know what she meant.
I did.
You're trying to get more musicians to join in and be suckers to feed off the money from the earlier musicians. It's either a Ponzi or a pyramid.
I don't know. All I know is I gave him a lot of money.
Yeah, that's the best thing to do. That way you know you did something right.
Yeah.
Do you have a set list, you guys?
We do in the Dead Weather, but it's becoming it's starting to disappear. Yeah. We have a different setup than the other band, like the White Stripes is a little bit different. There's only 2 people on stage, so it's very easy for me to call out something and change it in the middle of a song. We can stop a song and change it to something else. So now there's more people on stage, so it's a little more difficult to catch everyone's eye. So, but we're getting there slowly. Especially when the drummer, people aren't really looking at me. They're the other way. Yeah, exactly.
You're going off unilaterally somewhere.
Right.
And they're thinking, what's this prick up to?
Exactly. I agree with that completely. Reminds me of the Army or childhood. I can't remember. both of which I considered punishments. But again, the main crux of it is that I'm completely entombed in something that Dean has the keys to, and not Allison. And if I can look at him, he'll catch her attention. And there we are again, right back at the beginning. I've explained this all in my memo to you this morning.
Yeah, you did.
Lala, could you get a copy of that memo faxed over?
No problem.
That'd be great. Send it to me, too, because I'd like to understand what it meant.
You got it.
Meg will explain it.
Yeah, and then Meg can tell you. You know what's great? I'll tell you, just to shift stories a little bit. This morning we went to breakfast, the same place we had breakfast. I think this can only happen in New Zealand, because we went to breakfast this morning and the same place we had breakfast yesterday. But in line in front of us at breakfast this morning was two people. And the first person was someone who had given us coffee the day before at a different location, the first drink I had in the morning. And the person in front of him was the girl who had served us a beer last night, the last drink I had in the day. So in front of me was the two people who had given me drinks, the first drink and the last drink of the day were in front of me in line. And I told them this, that this could only happen in New Zealand. And they called security. I don't understand them. I was just making conversation. But that kind of thing doesn't happen in larger cities in New York or anything like that, you know. So it's interesting how everyone really knows each other here, don't they?
Yeah, they do. Yeah, they do.
Could you tell some of them to come to the show tonight?
Yeah. It's sold out, the show.
Oh, well then don't tell them to come.
Yeah, yeah.
Thanks, Mom.
What did you dream of when you were a kid? What did you want to be when you grew up?
I didn't know, but I went through different phases. For a while, I was really interested in the military. I wanted to be in the Air Force for a while. But then as I got older, I thought about being a priest. And
Are you telling the truth here, John?
I'm telling the truth this time,
Honest
yeah.
to goodness truth?
As much as the last question I said. The last answer I gave. You're asking the questions.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe we should switch it.
Okay, you ask me a question.
What did you want to be when you were a kid?
I wanted to be...
No, I mean, looking back, what would you like to be when you were a kid? Not when you wanted to be older. Would you rather change your childhood to something else? Think about it, John.
Yeah.
You know what you were. Tell me what you wanted to be back then if you didn't have to be yourself. Well, I'll send him a memo. John, I can't explain all this stuff to you.
Jacob Dean, thanks so much. Great. Great. It was a weird interview, but it was lovely.
Come on.
It was lovely sharing.